SheQuest Podcast is the home of heart-opening dialogues, stories, and experiences for self-identified women on a SheQuest. Season 5 is now bilingual as I welcome co-host Nadia Bonenfant. Hey, Nadia!
Hey, Estelle. Delighted to be part of SheQuest Podcast. Forward movement to live aware, bold, and whole. Let's do this.
Woohoo! Hi, SheQuest, and welcome to SheQuest Podcast. My name is Estelle Thompson. Welcome to the show. And today, I always say this every week, but I feel this week is extra special. You're meeting my makeup artist. That is right. I met Brandy at Big Black Mall. We do have a few connection outside of that. But Brandy does my makeup and she's darn good at it. And I've been not so secretly, wanted you come on the show and share your story. I want to know more about you, Brandy, and just about everything. And I'm just so grateful that you just wanted to share that with us. On the show here at SheQuest, I have a bit of a staple question I ask all my guests. And the first question is, what makes you feel alive today?
I think today is family. It feels really good. Everyone's kind of just working on their own little thing at home, and it feels really nice.
Can you just tell us about yourself? A lot of this podcast, this conversation on grief and, inclusion and trauma. And I'd love to go in the trenches with you, so to speak. Talking about how sexuality is fluid and just widening our lens really on, all of that in terms of identity, I guess, and personal growth. But also, I'm really fascinated about your craft because you're so good at it. And I want to talk about what lights you up and your passion. And I don't even know, I was thinking and in the email that I sent you, I was like, I don't even know if that's your real passion. Maybe you have other passions, but I just know you in that kind of realm. But I'd love to talk about creativity with you and perhaps even in a way that maybe help you in your path. But yeah, and here at SheQuest, we call it My She Story. So just tell us about yourself.
Well, geez, where do I start? Do you have your combat boots on? I think, well, for me, where did I start? I'd say I'm 30 years old. And since I was about 16, I started exploring gender fluidity. And that would have been the basis of when my transition would have started to happen. Yeah. And so I would say from the ages of about 18 to 25, I was living as a trans woman. And then slowly, as I kind of got into my later 20s, I realized that just something wasn't connecting. It didn't feel like I was living authentically. From that journey, I thought about a lot of stuff. I think I was really projecting my femininity in a way that society wanted to see it. When I started looking at all of the, materialisms that I would dress my ego in as armor to feel comfortable and accepted in our society, I didn't really need to do that, to be accepted, because I can accept myself how I come.
What do you think? I'm just curious, it was there a moment where I'm always so fascinated about that, thinking about your calling or whatever. And was there a moment where you're oh my goodness, this is not authentic to me. This is the projection.
I'm trying to think if there was an actual moment where everything just clicked. I think it really started clicking. I mean, I don't want to sound too typical, but during the first lockdown, we couldn't really go anywhere. We couldn't do anything. So I had no need to do my hair and to do my makeup and not that I didn't look not presentable, but there was no need for me to push myself like that. And I don't mean in a lazy way, but in a way of like, wow, was I really doing that for myself all these years?
Oh, I love that so much, Brandy. I love this conversation so much. And I think it's one that comes back just like for who am I doing this for? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's quite recent then.
Like I would say like really, I guess it's recent since I've actually had like the words to put it in, and then also have the path that I kind of need to go down to nurture that part of myself that I may have neglected over the years.
Do you mind taking me back? Like, I'd love to know one of the questions I sent you, and I want to go back to the pandemic because I just so interested about that. Like, take me back to when like you were 8, and perhaps like more not, I don't want to say official transition, but like when you like really started.
In reality, it's what would have been. It could have just been another like layer of my identity or our identity.
Yeah.
And I feel like we should be allowed to explore that in a way without it being like black and white. That someone can explore something for a couple of years and realize, you know what? Maybe that wasn't the best for me. It's still keeping us in touch with ourselves, that we're always us. There's just factors that may change our thought pattern. So at least when I was like younger, like I would say from like a very little age, like I was just attracted to like the materialisms of like femininity. Like I had no desire to like, you know, be rough with the boys or like do anything like that. Like if anything, I wanted to like, you know, sneak into my mother's bathing suit drawer and put on her like purple velvet bathing suit and then walk along the street with it because I just felt like $1,000,000. From there, you know, as I got older, that part of me got repressed because, you know, when you're 8 and you're younger than that, you have no anxiety. You don't really have this huge, at least I didn't, this huge, you know, what I was doing was wrong or what I was doing wasn't the like quote unquote norm, because this would have been in like 1998 now. And when I started to question my sexuality when I would have been 15, like at least vocally to my parents and stuff, that's what would have been what I would have come out as like gay, because even then we didn't have the information and the knowledge that, you know, if like being, you know, transitioning back then, it wasn't really normal in the sense that it was kind of like, oh, you're a she-male or you're a drag queen. It was never, you're a woman. So it slowly progressed from there after I was living my authentic reality of saying that I like the same sex, that I kind of got to explore a little bit of makeup. And I kind of like that. And then I got to explore, you know, maybe a girl shirt. And I'm like, wow, these girls t-shirts fit me a lot better than these boy t-shirts ever fit me. And that kind of developed to a skirt, to flats, to dresses, to more makeup, to kind of creating this like alter ego that has, you know, become who I am, Brandy. You know, from there, I think it's kind of the opposite is happening, is now I'm Brandy, but I'm going back and I'm nurturing Ben.
That feels so long ago. Like, or is it the opposite? How is time for you in that way? Like just now, like even, and I hear you say too, like just how even just like in the like since the pandemic, like how we can now put words to things that didn't used to have words.
Yeah. It's almost like making the emotional physical.
Yeah. Like I just love like your way, like the little snippet of, you know, bio, I love so much, like the detransitioning, like transitioning, and now you feel yourself almost detransitioning.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of the thing that I feel like within, like when I say the word, like that's why I kind of put like brackets around it, because I was like detransitioning ?ish, because I feel like I don't want to go back to, you know, who I was assigned at birth to. But in the sense that I kind of feel like I think saying that I'm in a transitional period in my life doesn't feel correct. Like I feel like right now, like I'm evolving. and that I'm taking like all of the things that like nurtured me as a woman and literally gave me strength and fed me and gave me the power to kind of like live my life how I wanted to live it. But then through all of that, I've kind of been open to like, you know, the male gaze and how hard I've repressed any ounce of masculinity that I had. If it's my voice being too deep or my shoulders being too broad or like, oh my God, I have no hips and I'm flat chested, they're going to know. And that's when it really kind of started to click for me. That I was like, why am I feeling so controlled to, you know, project this feminine energy when in reality, it doesn't need to be so black and white. And that's when I was kind of like, I feel like me, like owning my identity is like that right now. Like, what am I? I'm not too sure. Like me, I think I'm gender fluid. And like, who knows? I might jump back on the wagon and you know, and push forward with a transition again. But for the moment, I just feel kind of content on how I first started my like gender journey, which was just the material of it.
Like it's almost finding who we are beyond like the external world, you know, like like
Totally.
You know, like what if there was like not the voices of your parents in your head or not the voices of whose voice would it be, you know, and what would you do does that make sense what I'm saying? Like it's
yeah.
if Brandy were to live like on like a deserted island, like
how would Brandy live?
But and to bring how would she live?
I'd probably be pretty weird. Yeah.
Like most people, oh my God, I asked, this is like kind of random, but this weekend, I asked my husband, I said, what if you were to live on a deserted island, which one of our friends would you bring? Like not me, like not, you know, the spouse or whatever. And he said, I wouldn't bring anybody. I started questioning like the state of our social circle. I was like,
but I think that also speaks to that we only really need ourselves to get by, and then we can welcome support. But I'm like, there's a reality in that too. I'd probably want to be alone.
I feel that's true. I mean, personally, Estelle, like true, almost like maturity, like really passing the teenage stage. Do you know what I mean? Like just, and to go back to, because like, even though like the material is huge for me, like too, like when I think of like the way we express ourselves through clothes and through hair and through makeup and through like just how much expression that we can portray is not the right word, but do you know, like it's a huge part of my creativity, you know, to express, you know. And so how is that part for you now?
Yeah, I think like for me now, because I also think it's, you know, we're always told, you know, materialism is bad, you know, don't do this, don't do that, but it is so important. Yeah. And it's an important way to, like you said, express yourself. And so I feel like now I don't feel like as limited. And like, let's say if I needed to buy a pair of men's jeans that fit me better, I don't feel shame in that. And if I want to wear something that I think feels sexy, if it's sexy to me, I don't care if it's sexy to you. And kind of taking away what we would view as this is what's hot and this is what's sexy. Like I don't need to be that to express myself and be sexy and fun and confident.
Like there's so much freedom in that.
And I think that's like this like general, and I feel like we're experiencing this like as a whole, that there's like this, that there is an awakening going on within society. Like, is it happening fast enough? Maybe not, but there is. And I feel like everyone is slowly realizing that freedom is totally accessible in expression. I couldn't, like, I'm someone, I've never been in a relationship. So I'm someone that, like, really enjoyed casual dating and, maybe having one or two or three multiple lovers, And so when that kind of stopped, and then we couldn't really do anything, we were kind of confined to our own space, it's kind of like, oh, well, how do I make this space healthier for me? Like, what can I do with myself to better my life? And it kind of started with my hair that I'm sure you remember. I had like really long, beautiful hair that I would relax and blow dry. Oh, I would get it done every week. And when the pandemic happened, that stopped. So instantly, I almost felt this shame because my curly hair started coming back. I was like, I look like a monster. Ooh, I'm so undesirable. When in reality, I was just literally going back to my natural self. And I didn't want to because I had spent so long like repressing that to be the woman that men desired, to be the woman that society desired. And to almost like flex, if that makes sense. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but in a sense of like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong and look how good I can do it. That it almost became, it was armor in the beginning and it became ego. And when it became ego, it wasn't good anymore. And so when the pandemic happened and everything got taken away from me, or at least my tools as to be the woman that I wanted to be got taken away, I kind of had to sit with myself. And then I had a pretty intense psilocybin moment near the end of the last pandemic. And it kind of just took away a lot of things that I was holding on to, like fears and, offhanded things that people have said to me in the past, and that it didn't really matter anymore. And then I was like, you know what? I was like, I need to cut all my hair off. I want to let my curls come back in. I want to read about my spirit. I want to read about my body. I want to feed myself healthy relationships with people that want to be with me for more than just who I was in a community that is very often fetishized. And that I'm entitled to that. So when everything kind of opened back up again, it was like, okay, so now I need to put all this work into practice. So I've kind of had a year now to really kind of delve into like my most authentic self and to nurture the masculine energies that I really, really, really put down and was not nice to myself about.
I want to talk about that repression, but I also want to talk about, like you mentioned you had a really low point, like right before, kind of things opened up again. But then, can you talk to us about that? And if you don't want to, please don't. But I'm just wondering almost how it's almost like you had to learn to just own all of the maybe repressed emotion, and you just own that. And then it was almost kind of like walking with it, but in a more free way. Does that even make sense what I'm saying?
Totally. And I think it was like when things started opening up, it was kind of, I was scared because now, even though such a short time had passed, and I haven't really feel like I've changed at the core, I'm just more aware of myself, but it was kind of, there was the fear of not being not so much that I wasn't going to be accepted, but in the sense of, oh my God, is it going to look like I'm starting a transition? And that is an awful thing to say. But I think any woman that has experienced that knows that, getting your footing as to be the woman you want to be can be an awkward time. And I was so nervous of the judgment that I would receive in potentially giving off that energy, which is a nasty thought to have. And then it went to, all of the partners that I had. Like, oh my God, well, now that I'm not trying to be this little sex pot, are they going to be interested in me if I don't shave my legs? Are they going to pursue me if I'm not, portraying this heavy wave of femininity anymore? Like, will my love life become harder now that I'm even more in a gray area? And so it was really more challenging, I think, from a romantic standpoint than it was from anything, because I spent so long trying to be that, like the apple of the male gaze's eye. And so it was really, really, really hard for me to put the pieces back together, to be like, then if they don't like that, then that's fine, because you like that. And you liking that is enough. And that it's okay to say no.
It's
because I had a hard time saying that before.
Yeah, and it's so huge too, like almost like, what does Brandy like anyways? Like
yeah, because that's a hard question, right? Like outside of your typical music, movies, and walks, like what does Brandy like?
Yeah.
What does Estelle like? What does our neighbor 2 houses down like?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of it's been slow, and I'm letting myself make mistakes and letting myself feel, but I'm being forgiving.
I just had a conversation. I was just mentioning the same thing, but about trauma and how forgiveness is such a huge piece, in the recovery cycle. It's almost like the piece of the pizza that's like
Yeah.
the big, and like really almost like forgive like all the men who have looked at you and all everything that's, but also like forgive ourselves, in that forgive ourselves and like believing them almost,
Yeah, well, that's just it, right? It's easy to say I forgive you, but it's hard to mean it.
Yeah. I want to tell you a little story, and I bet you see this all the time, and I'm curious, just in your work environment, and I want to go back to the fetish, because that's really interesting to me, and it's something that we don't talk about on the podcast enough. But the male gaze and all that. I was in a clothing store, I forget, years ago. I've had, like, I keep questioning myself, like, I love to put makeup, as you know. I love makeup. I love beautiful clothes. It's like a huge part of, I don't know, my identity, I guess. And, in the way, like for me, it's art, it's all art. And, but anyways, I was at this clothing store, and this woman comes out, and when you're shopping alone, like, it's kind of like you're like in your own little bubble, and you kind of need
totally.
you kind of need some validation. So, and I was there by myself anyway. So the woman comes out, and like, her shoulders are down, and she looks at me, and and she says, "Do you think I can pull this off?" And it's just a moment in my life where, like, I looked at her and I said, "Do you want to pull this off?" And I'm wondering, and it was such, like, I still think about that moment, like, because I could use my own advice, like,
yeah, right.
But then, and I often, like, now, like, if I'm, shopping, whatever, like, do I want to pull this off? Like, is nothing else, like, who cares about anybody else but me? Like, do I want to be wearing this? Like, is it, do you know what I mean? Like, is it true to my own thing? But then the other thing she said, and I want your thought on this, but she said, but what about the male gaze? And like, I have so much compassion about this. Like, I'm not just judgment or at all. And I was like, oh my God, like it's something I don't, maybe because I've been married for too long. And my husband just doesn't fucking care what I wear. But, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, it's something like if you're dating or whatever, like, it's really something that you're aware of, Can you?
Yeah.
Is it something, like, when I tell this story, is it something that, like, lands with you, or?
Oh, well, totally, right? Well, it's just like, you need to wear what makes you happy and expression. That is, if it's sexy to her, then it's sexy. And if she is like, oh, I want to pull this off, well, then pull it off. And like, I think, especially like with the male gaze, is that we live in a society now where it's almost impossible to not get away from it, but we can do things to like, you know, heighten our awareness of it. And that's like, you know, taking away a lot of societal things that are normalized for women that aren't for men. That's like a really quick and easy way for me to kind of see things, because it's all the things that, you know, men really push for women, and that now it's stayed so long in our, like, you know, ancestry that it's become normalized. And like, you know, not frowned against isn't the right word, but just that we've become so used to that system of it and the sex appeal of it that we're all kind of not a slave to the system, but we're all living in it. But it's like up to, you know, gals like us that are building stronger foundations in ourselves to project the energy that we feel inside. And
I love the story with your hair, because I find, you know, not just in, you know, like our cultural background, but in so many cultural background, you know, your hair is such an identity piece, you know?
Oh, it's like the biggest shield you could have.
Yes, the shield, like such an armor. Like, I don't know if you remember when I had like really short hair.
Yeah, you had a little bob at one point, I think. Yes. Yeah, I remember.
I remember when you had long, like straight hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you would wear the ponytail, you know?
Yeah.
And it was white is something. And then when I saw you 2 weeks ago, like I saw you, I was like, oh my God. I love your curly hair, but it's so natural. Like it's so
Thanks.
well, I'm not just saying that, but I was like, wow, but like there's definitely like something more. But I guess my question is like, how do you feel now? Like, how do you think about like
I had a really good conversation with a friend last night that I was like, I need to remind myself to slow down, because I go so fast that I end up having to take a little U-turn and go back because I miss something. And I feel like, you know, half of me likes to go fast just because I'm also, you know, an adult with ADHD. So like, try and stop me. It's happened quick, but it's happened right. Like, I feel like at least in the physical part of my journey with my hair, like it felt right. And that really came down to, I just didn't feel like a woman anymore unless my hair was straightened. And because otherwise, it was relaxing it. I was straightening it all the time. My curls were limp. It just kind of looked like a giant cotton ball. Not to say that cotton ball hair isn't beautiful, but for me at that point in my life, it was triggering for me to not look perfect. And when I went through that kind of really heavy experiencing of releasing a lot of stuff and realizing that I needed to bring my child forward in the sense of like, I need to start living my life for them. And if I saw myself on the street when I was 13, would I look over and be like, wow, they're cool? And it kind of went back to like my favorite movie when I was younger, which was like Alien and Aliens with Sigourney Weaver. And I was just sitting at a fire and I was like, you know what? I was like, I just need to be that heroine. I just need to cut off all my hair and have her haircut. And that's going to feel good, because if I'm having problems kind of disassociating, I can remind myself the strong bitch that I am.
I love this so much. It's so powerful. Like, everything you're saying is so deep. And I want to do one last little parenthesis here, because just speaking of our hair journey, and you can tell me for you, it's a completely different, but like for me, when I chopped off all my hair, like I was really deep in grief. You know, I was really deep. I mean, I want to call it a transition, but I love that you've really widened my lens on that word transition, because I think I use it too much. Yeah, I'm gonna have to sit on that one. But and it was almost like the symbolism for me to cut my hair. Like I had really realized just how much I was hiding like behind my hair. And both
Yeah.
like yeah, and both like fit like literally like physically hiding my body with my hair and also like hiding my round face and psychologically like and energetically like it was almost like my hair had its hold on me.
No, I totally understand that. And it's heavy to carry.
Yes. Yes. And you know, I cut it and it was such freedom and it was just like kind of like, oh, it's still me. Like
Yeah.
and then I had this whole love story with my short hair. I was like, oh, I was a short hair person. I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And also, I want to hear more about you, but also I was fascinated by the reaction of people when I cut my hair because a lot of people were like, "Oh, but I thought you were like a long hair girl," you know, like it's like, well, I might allow, and then I would be like, "Oh no, I'm gonna have short hair like all my life," and now you see me, I have long hair now, and like it's funny the reaction of people and how much it affects us too. And it's like, no, but I have the permission to do whatever the fuck I want. Like with my
Yeah, exactly. You can enjoy it or you can keep your mouth shut, you know?
and it's almost like people put you in a box, you know? It's like, oh, she's like, and that's like feels secure like for them somehow, you know. So I want to know, like, was it like when you did cut your hair, how was that moment?
Well, when I cut it, I was terrified because I'm like, my entire life, I've always wanted bangs. And my hairdressers always said, like, curly haired people cannot have bangs. Like, you'll never have bangs. Your hair is too curly.
Exactly. So who said that and why?
Exactly. I'm like, they're all liars. And so when I was doing it, my biggest fear was, oh my God, I'm gonna look like a boy. In the sense of like I didn't want to look like I was trying to detransition because it wasn't the reality, but I was kind of met with the opposite. That it was like way more feminine and I got way more compliments and I felt way more connected to who I am. Like with it. And like, obviously, you know, it was a little rough at one point, just trying to let the curls come back, but it almost just felt like, holy shit, why didn't I do this like 5 years ago? You know, I was like, why was I so against my curly hair for so long? When I cut it all off and then came back to it, and then when people were like, oh my God, it looks like you, I was like, it does look like me. It is me.
Yeah.
Just a more authentic version of myself.
I mean, I think it's inevitable too. Like, I think when you feel just more yourself, you're just like more a magnet for, can really exude, like others feel that, you know?
Oh, totally.
But let's talk about the fetish in like your community and I feel for transgender community, you know, like it's heightened, you know, the fetish part. Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like just for like the best spectrum of it, you know, going back to when I was younger, I had no male attention through high school. And when I did start to transition, I got a little more attention than I ever had before. So I'd jump on it, right? Because I was like, ooh, yes, like men love me now. Within that kind of mindset, I kind of created this anti-no mode where I would sell myself short on a lot of men that would, you know, approach me to the point that I don't feel it honest saying that it was like abusive, but I definitely felt used near the end. That it was no longer about me, it was about my body and my look. And it was hurting my feelings because I feel like I'm great. And I feel like a lot of, well, I was going to say men, but I'm going to say people. A lot of people are very fluid in their sexuality and could be blissfully unaware of it because that's not how we were brought up. And a lot of men still slump themselves in the category of it being, you know, too gay to be with a trans person, or being with a trans person is gay. And I think that's why there's so many deaths in like trans women murdered almost every week now. It's awful because they're being murdered by the men that are repressing their feelings of probably enjoying the company of trans women. And I feel that we look at such a biased view of sexual orientation that it's really not that biased, and it can really flow kind of like energy. Like, I'm primarily attracted to men, but I have come across a few women in my life that I'm like, do I have a crush on her? Like, do I like her? And I think it's energy that we all kind of need to welcome in, because without that, nothing is ever going to change. And I also think, too, is that a lot of women can be judgmental on men that are bisexual. And that can stem from a lot of things, but I feel like there's just so much judgment from every aspect in the queer community. But I feel like primarily there's just a lot of discreet men that will message me and approach me. And I would say 75% of them have partners. Do I engage anymore? Absolutely not. But I am also not proud of a lot of the actions that I've done to get attention that wasn't really healthy.
That's why I wanted you on the show.
Yeah. Happy Pride. Yeah.
Can you just define, like, sexually fluid? Like, is there a way even to, like, almost, like, define that? And I do, like, I really relate to, like, when you said energy, because in yoga we talk about, like, Shiva and Shakti, you know, all the time. It's in us, you know. We both have the feminine and masculine inside us. So that really, you know, speaks to me in that dimension. And our you know, our mission really is to merge the two so that it's like the perfect kind of a amount of each for us, you know, for each of us. So in that way, that, like, really speaks to me. And I gotta say, me too, sometimes, like, there's some women I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm just like, and you say that as a joke, right? It's stuff people say as a joke, like, oh my God, like, if, you know, if I was a lesbian, or if I was this, you know, and then you gotta, like, if I sit on it a bit longer, I'm like, wait, am I? Like,
yeah. And I think that's, like, a healthy thought to have. And then even, like, you know, even if it was just in your head and your fantasy, but it's fun to let yourself have that fantasy. You know, if I ever had the chance to, you know, take that woman out for a nice meal or to be with that woman, we'd have a great time.
So define for you, like, define what sexually fluid, like, means.
Like, I think as someone who would, like, for the longest time, who identified themselves as, like, a straight trans woman, I think for me, I had a really hard time. If I expect people to be open, I need to be open. In the sense that I don't need to look for it, but I need to be open. Because I can't tell you how many times, like, I'll have a conversation going, it's flowing, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, they're gone forever. Or I've had a really incredible evening with someone, and I think that they're not used to being so comfortable with themselves to explore things that they've desired, let's say, that they are then ashamed of it because they were too open. And so I think that if we allow ourselves to live in less constraint in our sexuality and welcome fluidity in, and to kind of just, like, go with the flow. And if you're attracted to someone, male or female, should that be a deterring factor? Oh, well, I'm, you know, I like men. So just because I'm attracted to that woman doesn't mean, like, that I can't do that. Like, it's kind of that mentality of of thinking that I feel like being sexually fluid, I guess in some terms would be similar to being on the spectrum of pansexual, but more so just being open to the rhythm that sexuality is going to appear in your life.
Yeah, staying open. It's beautiful what you said, you know, staying open to the rhythm of, I love that. I've never thought about it that way, you know, the rhythm of sexuality, you know, in your life. And the word that comes back to, you know, it's like just seeing how much we've suppressed, you know, in our lives. And in my work with women, like I see it, it just like, you know, that I love that you speak of, you know, it seems in your recovery, you know, to really nurture that inner child, like that's been so vital, you know, for you. And I feel like for me, one thing I work a lot with women is just to play, like to have fun. Isn't that silly? Like we forgot.
Well, I totally relate, because I would say like 98% of the people that I would, you know, like work with in my job would be women. And I do feel like a lot of women don't, like, well, I don't want to say women, but a lot of people don't play enough and let themselves be silly.
Like it's so cathartic when you actually let yourself be a bit wild and be a bit crazy, and like you almost remember yourself there. You remember yourself as a child, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's veer gear for a moment, and I want you to speak of because you just said your work. Talk to us about like makeup and it's how it made its way in your life, and I also find it very serendipitous in a way, like for me, makeup, it's like, you know, almost like helping others like find their beauty, you know, not just outer, but really there's something more to makeup for me, like, and maybe for you as well. But and I'm curious to know, like, is it your passions, or do you have other passion? Like, is it like how, yeah, just all of that. How did you like fall into it, and what does it mean for you now?
Ooh, makeup. I think I've always loved like film. Like I would probably say film is probably one of my biggest passions like in life. I could talk about movies all day. I'm not even going to elaborate because you won't get me to stop talking about them. So when I was finishing school, I kind of knew that I wanted to go, you know, into film. And then I was kind of nervous because I was like, well, it's not a great guarantee job, this and that. I could do hair. And then I was like, you know what? I should do makeup. Like I'm enjoying makeup because it's helping me express my identity. I remember having an amazing experience at Mac when I would have been like newly transitioned. And I was like, I want to make everyone that I help at work feel like how I did then. So I kind of pursued makeup from there. And like my relationship with makeup is so different than how it all started. It's hard to sometimes sell makeup in in a way that I'm like, is this healthy? To a sense that for me, like I love it. I love the trend of makeup and the application of makeup and making people feel better. But I also feel that I'm at a point now where I'm like, makeup is only there to make you, you know, feel better. If you feel like you like need it because of X, Y, and Z, or you're so gung-ho about kind of covering something up or this and that, that I'm kind of like, we need to embrace that part of ourselves so we don't feel like we need to like smack like a mask on it. And that like especially like, you know, being a woman, it's like we need to look representable. You know, we can't have dark circles. We can't look we can't look too flushed. We can't look too overdone. Like we need, oh God forbid, like our, you know, liquid liner smears. That there's a lot of pressure behind it. And I feel like that's especially what was really prominent with me during the pandemic is how good it felt to take that pressure away. And that it's a beautiful tool. Like I did my makeup like a full glam for the first time since COVID a couple of months ago. And I was surprised at how good it made me feel, and also relieved to know that I didn't feel forced to do that every day again.
It's so powerful what you say. I mean, I'm just so moved by it, you know. I mean, we were making jokes like about it, you know, like all the men. I remember when like last year, like let's say like when everything shut down, you know, and like everybody like we're like, oh, all those extra girls, you know,
Yeah.
like, but we were making jokes about it, you know, like, oh, like you won't have your nails, you'll have your like regrowth, you know, your white, everybody white hair and this and that. But like, think of the like, you know, like you've had a bit of an existential crisis over it, you know, like it was,
Yeah.
And like that's something I think about with my white hair all the time. Like, you know, like do I learn to embrace it, or because it's a choice really to dye your hair again, you know, back to hair, but but like, you know, like just the choice, and like, yeah, I'm okay without nails, but I like, am I really okay? Like, who do I wear my nails for, and this and that, and like, I just love what you said. Like, you have that choice to do yourself up, and then to also know, like, I can expand my energy elsewhere, you know, and I like, I'm okay too. Like, I just love that choice, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like as like anyone who presents feminine deserves that right.
Yeah.
Deserves the right that if they don't really feel like doing that, then they shouldn't have to do that.
And then I'm just curious and borderline nosy, but I'm curious to know, like, what do you hear the most at the makeup stand? Like, you've done my makeup like several times. Like, what do you hear the most? Like, is it like, do you feel you have to pump up women a lot, or do you like, even in yoga, I hear the stuff I hear sometimes. I'm just so saddened by it. Like, what is that experience for you? Like, where do you find yourself in that?
A lot of women, they definitely don't pump themselves up as much as they should, or liberate themselves as much as they should. Because I feel like so many people can come in with something in mind, and their walls are so up that it's kind of like they can only go down the hallway. But I'm kind of like, you should look in this closet over here. I think you'd love it. But they might not want to hear it, right? So I feel like, and that also comes from security. But I definitely feel like I do need to add a lot of enthusiasm and give women and men power back. Because I find, especially, it's not like, I find makeup's not like cooking, right? That if you make a really bad or undercook the chicken, no one's going to know but you, because you're going to throw it out. But if you try really hard on your makeup and it doesn't look so good, you're probably going to get a lot of judgment from that, which isn't fair. So I feel like there is a level of hesitancy a lot with comfort, but I want to challenge people to get out of their comfort zones, because that's how we're going to evolve. Because we're going to be like, oh, that didn't feel good, so I should do it like this next time. Or that felt really good, so I should try this too.
It's so intimate too, and I think of what you do, you know, like touching the face, and like, yeah,
it's really personal.
Like it's on their face.
Yeah. That's like, it's literally like painting a mask on yourself in reality, right? Like, it's art, but it is a form of expression. And what if you don't, you know, people want to be expressed sometimes a certain way.
Do you have other passions?
Oh, well, I really love like spirituality and kind of just like grounding ourselves within that same frequency of like nature. I really love that. I love photography. I recently started taking photos with a 35 millimeter that I've been meaning to take for years. And I finally started doing that. And it's, I think, the first project that I've done in a long time that I'm doing it and I'm getting it back, and it's even better than what I thought it would be. And that feels really good. because I am trying to call as much power to myself as I can. So that reward right now is extra nice for me. And like, as far as my other passions, like, I mean, I'm going to be basic, but I love spirit dancing. I love putting on like a tune, if it's something super slow and ambient, to something really loud and dirty, and just letting my body move however it wants to move. If it's thrusting on the floor to wiggling my arms in the air, I felt that's something that is like beyond helped me kind of get back into my body, especially during this evolutional period in my life.
When I think I couldn't love you more, then there's that. I love, what did you say again? Like thrusting on the floor?
Oh yeah. Like thrusting on the floor. Like sometimes you can move your body and it can feel like you're a ballerina, and then other times you feel like you want to be in an R&B music video with a thong on.
Exactly. So many great options there that you've suggested to ground yourself and embody your powers. I love it, Brandy. I love it.
I love you.
I have like a little like quick answers question, but before I'm just trying to imagine who's listening to us, and if there was like anyone listening that's like and I don't know if I want to use that word now, like transitioning, or like what, like, is there any advice, like any somebody that's like feels really lost about their identity right now, and kind of caught in, you kind of mentioned like kind of self-harm, and like just maybe harm in general, or just in it, like, is there anything that you just suggest, or
like, I definitely think patience is a virtue, and you will need to embrace it, not only for yourself but for society, because sometimes we don't want to be educators and we end up having to educate. No. And so I feel like you need to come to acceptance with yourself that will come up, and that you also need to explore your depths. And there's nothing wrong with baby steps. It's like makeup, right? The softer you build it, the better it is. And I feel like that could be said to anyone going through a period in their life where they feel like they need to make a change, that it doesn't need to be 180. It can be really, really slow. And that's a beautiful way to test your boundaries of how far you're comfortable with pushing yourself and how far you're not. Because only you can decide that. Like, as a woman, as a man, as someone fluid, as someone non-conforming, that it's only up to you to, build yourself how you'd like to be. So take your time and be nice to yourself. Because, girl, what you're doing is so important that you need to be forgiving.
So beautiful. I want to, I'm like frantically taking notes as you speak. Yeah. I'm gonna freaking have to transcribe this podcast. It's so good. Yeah, I love what you said about the makeup. Can you repeat it? The softness you build.
Oh, well, I just said, like, it's like makeup, right? Everything in our society now is instant, right? We want it quick. We want it now. We order it. We get it tomorrow. And I feel like that's like the biggest thing I tell people. Is probably the biggest tip I say to people with makeup is, when you build it slow, it's always going to look better. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that kind of goes for life, right? If you start building yourself up slowly, before you know it, you're going to be like 18 stories up. And then you're going to look down and be like, holy shit, like how far I've come.
Oh my God, totally. And it's so true. Like my concealer, like if I just take the time to kind of just rub it in a little and like give myself a lymphatic drainage at the same time.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it looks so much better and it stays longer.
It does, right? And then it's like you're creating like a ritual with yourself. Like that's kind of, whenever I apply makeup now, I kind of look at it as like, it's like a ritual.
Such a ritual for sure. We have this joke in my women's circle, the girls I do yoga with too. It's that New Kids on the Block song. I think you're 30. I think do you know the New Kids on the Block? Like
ish. Yeah, my age might come out here.
Yeah. Like, you know that song, Step by Step.
Yes, yes, I do.
The girls are like, oh, and you're like overwhelmed, blah, blah, blah. Just start singing that song, step by step. Anywho, but I love the makeup analogy for sure. Build it slow. I love it. Maybe the title of our podcast. Who knows?
Oh, it's a good one, girl. It's a good one. Get your bricks ready. Yeah.
So many golden nuggets. Okay, I have a little like quick answer question things. Are you ready?
Yes.
Do you have a favorite mantra?
Show me how it gets better.
Oh, good. That's a good one. Wow. How about a favorite flower?
Wisteria.
Ooh, I've never heard this one on the show.
It's kind of a vine, but I think it's a flower too.
Ooh. What about a favorite book you've read? But let's keep it like, how about a favorite book you've read like maybe recently, about identity? You say you love spirituality and all that. So is there one book you could recommend us for like things we've talked about today?
Yeah, one book I'm reading that I've read recently that was really mind-blowing to me it's called Good Sex. And the whole book is about how to not disassociate and how to bring your spiritual life kind of into all aspects of your life, including your sexuality. And it gives you like a lot of tools and techniques to kind of align yourself with your true identity. But what I like about it is that where it is kind of, followed by sex, I find it's a little funner to read about.
Yeah, for sure.
So it kind of keeps the pacing of the book. It was really amazing. And I think anyone who's feeling disconnected from themselves, physically, sexually, should totally check it out.
Sweet. We'll have to put it in the show notes. Do you know the author?
Oh, this is going to be so embarrassing. I do not. I feel like I'll say her name wrong.
But it's called, I forget all the time. It's called Good Sex.
It's called Good Sex. And I think it's like sex without disassociating.
Oh, that's so good because dissociation is so huge. So huge, dissociation.
Well, we just do it so much now without even noticing it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll have to have you on the podcast again to talk about dissociation.
Oh, let's go, girl.
Let's see. Do you listen to podcasts? Do you have a favorite podcast?
Like very casually, I think my favorite is Video Rental. It's just a collection of like kind of like real spooky little stories, but it keeps me pretty entertained in traffic.
Sweet. I love hearing podcasts I've never heard of. Sweet. How about a favorite treat? I mean, it can be food, but it doesn't have to be.
I love a willow tree.
Oh, I love that.
I love a weeping willow.
Oh, incredible. Are there weeping willows in Bedford?
No, unfortunately not, but I can dream.
Amazing. So just to kind of wrap it up here, I mean, first, I just want to thank you for sharing so vulnerably and openly, and just there's so many stories. Like they just, I'm gonna have to re-listen to this podcast again because it was just so. I just appreciate you so much and your voice, and we've talked about like this, and I love it's been so recent for you, this kind of real shift, like real kind of crossover almost. And you talked to us, really about your magic. But my last question that I've been asking lately on the show is like, what do you wish, I said women, and doesn't have to just be women, but what do you wish more women knew about their own power and their own magic?
Ooh, I think the biggest thing is to embrace your empathy and listen to your intuition. And from there, that magic just slowly starts ringing in because you're literally just listening to your soul and what your soul wants you to know. And if you feel like you're having thought patterns that aren't the best, then that empathy is also going to come back to help you.
You should see my notebook now. It's full. So glad I had you. It felt really luxurious to have you then more than like a little 10 minutes at the mall and to just.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so grateful to have done this with you.
Yay. And where can we find you, Brandy, and how can we support you?
Oh, well, you can find me on Instagram at Elusive Brandy. And for supporting me, I would love for everyone to take a little bit of judgment away. And we can work as that as a collective, because I feel like right now I'm feeling very, very, very supported. And I want more support to go back into not just my community, but every community. So I feel like we just need to kind of call back some of our judgment that happens naturally and make it better.
Oh, well said. Well said. Thanks again so much. Well,
thank you so much for having me, Estelle.
I just want to talk to you all afternoon.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have you back. Thank you again so much. Bye.
Oh, no problem. Bye.
This podcast was produced by Tosh Taylor of the Podcast Hub Productions. Find her online at podcasthub.ca.